Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Lake Crackenback Resort. My name is Melissa Phillips, and I'm honoured to speak on behalf of Sue, Brock and Mitch today to celebrate a life well lived and to remember David Harrison, or Harro, as he is known to many of us. Sue and the boys would like to thank everyone for making a journey here today to the beautiful Thredbo Valley. Today we will hear a little of the story of David, some anecdotes from friends, and finally Sue would love everyone to stay on to celebrate David's life and enjoy the music, good company, and share stories of Harro. I'd like to begin by telling you that David Edwin Harrison was born in Newcastle in 1957 as one of 4 children of Stella and Edwin. David grew up near the beach, and as a teenager he became involved in whitewater and slalom kayaking in both teams and individual. He was in the Hunter Valley Canoe Club, competing in many races in both kayak and canoe, going on to represent New South Wales in Australian Championships, and then being in the Australian team at World Championships in Skopje, in Macedonia, Yugoslavia, and Spital in Austria. Hope I've got that right. Due to shoulder injuries requiring cortisone injections, David decided to give up competing. In 1978, David moved to the mountains and started working with Keith Thorne at Village Ski in Cooma, moving over to work with Cess Bottom and Richard Mould at Eiger Sports in Jindabyne in 1982. He had a passion for helping people and was a perfectionist when tuning skis and fitting boots. Dave had many jobs over the years. He started as a mechanic, then during summers he made surf skis for Interceptor wave skis and was a professional fisherman with Bill Lydon at Seal Rocks, probably due to his love of seafood, according to Sue. He was also part of the Benson and Hedges ski deck team, including Nonnie McDonald, Steve Young and others, travelling to shopping malls in New South Wales and Queensland, showcasing skiers with instructors teaching skiing. He loved skiing, but he never had any formal lessons. His skiing style was aggressive and fast. He heli-skied in Canada with Mike Weegley heli-skiing, numerous resorts in the United States, and of course in Japan. David and Sue met up on the 17th of July 1987 while Dave was working at Eiger Sports. Sue was working with Clipper Tours as a hostess and fondly remembered taking a group from Sydney into the shop to be fitted with hire gear. Harro, while talking to Argie, said to Sue, "Have you ever had a Mexican snowball?" Sue remembered that they were both 29 at the time, and later that evening they met up again at the Aspen Chalet, now known as the Banjo, with the Clipper Tour group in tow, of course. And then they ended up at the renowned Brumby Bar, being served drinks by Stumpy Pendergast over the bar. And Sue remembered it was a bit of a crazy night because some drunk guy put his fist through the window. She could not remember whether she got that Mexican snowball or not, but what she did remember was that she met the love of her life that night. This was the start of their love journey that resulted in many trips up and down between Sydney and Jindabyne till Sue moved down for good in June 1988. They moved in together at Corunda in Tyrolean Village, with Sue working at the St George Bank in Jindy and David was still working at Eiger Sports in Jindabyne. David at this time also worked with a whitewater rafting business known as Upper Murray Whitewater Rafting. He became a partner of the business and loved taking groups down the river, nearly drowning on a couple of occasions. However, once again, Sue said that didn't stop him. Sue also proudly spoke of Harro's involvement in the design of the Olympic whitewater course at Penrith and how when the boys were little, They all went to the Sydney Olympics in 2020 to see the whitewater events. 2000, yes, sorry. It's a brain typo there, sorry folks. They took over the shop, better get this one right, in June 1992, and it started out as high country ski and sports until one day Bruce Marshall suggested that a name change to Harro's would be more befitting. The shop was renamed and the legend of Harro as we know him began for a new generation. Soon the boys arrived. First Brock in 1993, followed by Mitch in 1996. The young family took up residence in Kapara Drive, Berrydale, and created many wonderful memories there over 27 years. David adored his boys, who he and Sue often proudly spoke about as being well-rounded, loving, exceptionally caring and amazing. Harro knew that after he had gone, Sue would be well looked after by Brock and Mitch. David also had many summer jobs in the early days while the boys were young. He ran summer activities at LCR, he worked at Mitre 10, and he worked for Gary at Cooper Outdoor Education. You may have guessed it, apart from Sue and the boys, the business was the love of his life. He talked to more people at the shop than his wife, and he was very fond of most customers. With his family at home, Harro was somewhat quieter, probably because he had spent all day talking and chatting to people at work. He was a bit too accommodating at times, and he was known as "have a chat" by those who knew him well. One of his favourite sayings was, "If my heart was any bigger, it wouldn't fit in my chest." Keeping people happy and looking after the customers was what David was best at. Harro also loved his staff. He employed predominantly local people and local kids, not blow-ins. For many years he drove up and down between Crackenback and Berrydale, very early of a morning and very late of a night. Some of us remember seeing him doing that. He was well known in the ski industry for his honesty and for being a man of his word. He loved it when the reps called into the shop for a coffee and a chat, and he always took them to the larder for a coffee. I'm sure there's some of you here that can remember that. He knew how much his suppliers respected him, and he never preempted that he would be leaving in such a hurry. For some special customers, there were even visits to the container out the back, and Aladdin's cave of skis of all types. And I know you're out there, the people who know about that container. Some of you here today had the good fortune to visit Harro in Niseko or Furano as well, and to see his smiling face, getting that same wonderful service in another Harro ski shop in Japan. He even enjoyed shoveling snow, just not the roof, according to Sue. Harro was very fond of his time in Japan, and the family have many wonderful memories and stories. Harro loved Japanese food, in particular soup curry at Sabara, and deer curry from Shunsai was one of his favourites. And not a day went by when he didn't eat sushi or sashimi for lunch. Sue, who did the books and still does, had to keep an eye on Harro's spending when it came to all that coffee. So eventually they purchased a coffee machine, and young Mitch learnt to so expertly use it. Sue also remembered how Harro nearly ended up in jail while he was in Japan, after he threw a traffic infringement that arrived in the mail into the bin without reading it. He failed to get his letter translated, and as it turns out, while he loved Japan, he didn't really master the language terribly well. He really did love running those two shops in both countries and was quite miffed when COVID ran interference with his business. This amazing family business known as Harro's will have been at LCR for 30 years in June 2022. What an achievement. And Harro is very proud that Mitch is continuing on in the family business. Another fond memory shared by Sue was Harro's 50th birthday, when a friend organised car racing in a radical car race at Oran Park, which, for those of you who don't know, it's now a suburb of Sydney. Bert Lee Besetter festooned the race car with 50th birthday decals, and Harro had a ball. David loved golf, and as with everything he did, he put 110% into it. He thoroughly enjoyed the yearly golf trips with a group of like-minded guys to Yarrawonga. He also got to play at the famous Barnbougle and King Island courses only a couple of years ago. All David wanted to do as he moved towards retirement was to get a small centre console fishing boat to use on the ocean and to go golfing. He was planning on moving to Tura at the end of 2022 to the home that he and Sue bought, where he could walk out the back door to the golf course, go beach fishing, ocean fishing, and to put some lobster pots in at the Tura heads. David made so many lifelong friends from kayaking, fishing, ski deck, ski shops and golf, which is evident by all of you being here today to celebrate his life. You all respected and loved this honest, generous man who has looked after yourselves, your families, and now their families. And he regarded you all as his friends. Now some of Harro's good friends would like to speak. And I'd like to invite Gary Bruce to come up first.
Melissa has said just about everything you can say about Harro, but I think we've got a little bit more to say. The fact that all you people are here today says it all, really. You look at the Olympics, the fireworks this year, there was supposed to be 1 million people there, but COVID kept so many away, and yet Harro is so well respected. Look how many people have turned up here today, and I know that there's many, many people that just couldn't make it today. It says basically that today we're remembering one of the best known and best loved people in the Snowy Mountains. Two days ago, Peabody put a post on the Facebook. I hope everyone goes and reads that, because Peabody, he was a mate of mine way back in the college days. He said things that, I'll never be able to put into words. Peabody is just a lifelong friend of Harro's and one of his best mates, best man at his wedding. And I'd like everyone to go and read that if they have the afternoon, because he was able to put into words what I could never. He's a university lecturer and he's got the gift of words which I just lack. So please, when you leave here today, go and read that, and it'll be something special that I can't say. For my part, I just like a simple $1 for every time I heard the phrase, "Do you know Harro?" Because I use it constantly, I hear it constantly. Every time the conversation turns to the Snowy Mountains, somebody says, "Do you know Harro?" It is generally the most common phrase that you hear, and I've used it so many times. Peabody talked about Harro's thoughtfulness, his compassion, his selflessness, his generosity, and his genuine concern for others, and his true compassion for life itself. They sum up Harro's life just as it was. 40 years ago, I first heard about Harro. It was by Peabody. He was telling me about a small group of mates who used to go paddling They were representing Australia going overseas. I didn't know Harro, didn't know his name, certainly didn't remember his name. 20 years later, Harro, after I've met Harro, you know, he's telling me the same story about this group of guys that went paddling overseas, you know, the crap they used to get up to. I said, oh, wow, Harro, mate, did you know Peter Bodycott? Yeah, he's my best mate. He says, I was his best man at his wedding. It was just typical. 10 years later, just 5 years ago, I'm going by chair at Perisher. A stranger sitting next to me. Oh, yeah, you chatter, nothing like that. Oh, where you come from? Oh, I come from up here. Oh, really? What do you think the guy said? Do you know Harro? I said, yeah, I know him really well. Oh, we used to go paddling together overseas with a group of mates. Absolutely a small world when it comes to Harro. He's got so many fingers in so many pies. He knows so many people. It's never a surprise to find out that when you say, do you know Harro, that person could be from anywhere in any part of his life. Do you know Harro is almost as synonymous as do you know Perisher? Do you know Smiggins? Do you know Lake Jindabyne? Do you know Harro? You know, it is truly legendary status. And the fact that you're all here today says that. Like Melissa said, everything Harro did, he had to excel at. And he did. He just wasn't happy just to be good at something. You know, he was a great skier. He was the best ski tuner. Melissa's mentioned all these things. He was fantastic. He knew everything about fishing. You know, he was Australia's best paddler. And Melissa said that. But some of us oldies would probably remember the Solo Man. You know, the drink it down Solo Man. And the older people probably remember the canoe parked up on the top of the cliff, you know, down into the water. You know, and then the good-looking guy drinks the can of Solo. Well, you know what? That good-looking man, that wasn't Harro. But the guy coming down the hill on the canoe, Harro's the stunt man. Well, it was at least one of those ads. And, you know, he never ever even told many people about it. He's just such a proud and such a humble person. Then we come to golf. We mentioned golf. Harro was a good golfer. And if you've got some kids here, maybe I'd cover their ears up right now. But Harro he didn't excel at golf. He was just very good. The fact that he called it whack fuck actually explains it all, you know. It was the big whack. Oh, fuck. I'm sorry for the kids, but that's exactly what he called it, you know. And I was up in Coffs Harbour last week, and my 14-year-old nephew, he texts me, hey, Uncle Gary, can we go have a game of whack fuck? No, Harro's legend continues to spread. You know, it's, look, I'm sorry, just losing myself here a little bit. Despite all Harro's talents, you know, I remember going to see him in hospital. He asked us to come down. He had some news to tell us, and we went in there. We were still expecting a full recovery at this stage, and we get the news. Harro says he's only got weeks to months to live. You know, tears pouring down Wendy's face, my wife, and I'm chucking it back, trying to hold it. Harro must have been devastated. All his dreams and that were there. His time down with Sue down the coast, the grandkids, Mitch and Harry, the times he was going to miss out. He must have been hurting. But all he could see was the pain on us. And he just cracked jokes, had a sense of humour to make us feel better. You know, even the nurses at the hospital commented that they haven't seen people who have been told they've only got a couple of months to live have the sense of humour that Harro had. It's a tribute to the man that he could think of others even in this time of despair. People become legends because they gain respect. And Harro gained the respect of so many people. It didn't matter who you were. You could have been rich, you could have been poor, you could have been famous, you could be a nobody. You could be young, old, man, woman, Aussie, ethnic. It didn't matter to Harro. Harro just treated you the same. unless you're a total dipstick, well then Harro liked you. He had this innate ability just to like people. You know, he even liked the dipsticks, which is really hard because I used to say, Harro, mate. And he'd say, no, he's a good bloke. He just saw the good in people all the time. We were getting our tennis court laid just a couple of years back, and Mark Edmondson was the person laying the court. Oh, you come from the Snowy Mountains? Yeah. What does he say? Do you know Harro? Yeah, I know Harro really well. It's amazing how many times you get this, do you know Harro? And even if you ask people, the answer is always, yeah, he was a good mate. Some of my best memories, our best memories, are with the Harrison family. They are the best, but I'm also not stupid enough to think that every other person and every other family here would be thinking exactly the same thing. That was just Harro and Sue's ability. They made people feel welcome. But somehow I thought our relationship, the Bruces and the Harrisons, was just that little bit extra special. And it certainly was. But you know what? 100% sure that every other family and every other person here would be saying exactly the same thing. Harro and Sue just had that ability to make every relationship special, and it was. To appreciate Harro, you really only have to look at his family. Sue, what a wife. What a mother. An absolute tower of strength through this whole ordeal. She's just been beyond belief how she's got through this with the boys. Harro and Sue shared that special bond, and we're just all very, very lucky that Harro and Sue was able to share that special bond with so many other people. Brock and Mitch. You've been mentioned many times, mate. No parents could ever be more proud than these two boys. Both of you, you've got so much of Harro in you, there's no chance you're going to turn out bad. You just absolutely are lucky that you've got it in you, and it's a present Harro's given to you for the rest of your life, guys. And you're going to be so thankful that whatever you are in the future, you'll be part of Harro. I think I'd like to actually use Brock's girlfriend Maz's quote, if she doesn't mind. She posted on Facebook. It just sums up the whole feeling. Maz is an amazing girl. I'll just read part of the thing she posted on Facebook. I used to wonder how somebody like Brock existed. Loyal and caring beyond belief. Someone who'd give you the last grain of rice if you needed it. And then I met Harro. It sums it up. And Maz, you couldn't have put it any better, because that's exactly what it was. Harro loved Sue and Brock so much. They loved the kids, they loved the boys, but they never pandered them. They let them grow up, they let them be boys. They were allowed to climb trees, ride motorbikes, skin their knees. They're so fortunate, because so many people these days wrap their kids in cotton wool. But Brock and Mitchie and Sue and Harro just let them be who they were. I'll just be quick with this, but I remember one of our family holidays in Narooma. We're down there and we're out prawning in the middle of the night. I can already see Mitch laughing. He remembers it. We're out prawning in the middle of the night. The boys were probably about 8, 9, 10. And, the oldies, we were scooping up the prawns, and the young boys, they were holding the prawn buckets, and we were just scooping them in. The prawns were running hot, and it was a really good night. Harro, he was like a man possessed. He was just scooping up, throwing them in any bucket. Harro loved prawns. But we started to wander out into the middle, and it was starting to get a little bit deep. I started to get a little bit worried. I was looking around, hey, Harro, where's Mitch, mate? He'd be right. I'm looking around. No, seriously, mate, where's Mitch? So we took the lights out of the water, and we're shining them around. It's 1 o'clock in the morning here, and We spot Mitch. No, we don't. We don't spot Mitch. We spot 2 prawn buckets with hands attached to them. In between the prawn buckets, here's Mitch on his tippy toes. His head's back like this, so he could breathe. Too scared to speak because water will have gone into his mouth. Harro just looks at him and says, "You right, Mitch?" Harro goes, "I'm good." Oh, great. And we just got back onto prawning. He didn't pander them. We were having a good time. It's classic Harro. If you're having a good time, you ain't going to... The boys are allowed to be boys, and that's something we'll always cherish. I'm sure we all have stories like this about Harro, and we're all here because we love and we know him. It is true that he's a real legend of the mountains, and he deserves legendary status. The only thing that's changed about that legendary status is the phrase, "Do you know Harro?" very, very sadly has now become, "Did you know Harro?" But I know that phrase will be around, for a long, long time to come. And all of us, here, the people here and people who aren't here, when they're asked, "Did you know Harro?" they'll buck up, have a big smile on their face, and they'll say with the utmost pride and that special bond that only Harro could give, and say, yes, I knew Harro. He was a very, very special man and we loved him. So Harro, mate, thank you. Thank you for your life. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your humour. And on behalf of everyone who knows you, thank you for what you gave us. Harro, mate, you're truly a legend.
Thank you so much, Gary. That was straight from the heart. Could I please call Raymond Baxter to the microphone?
Gary, I just want you... where is Gary? Where'd he go? Hi, Gary. I just want to just fix a few things up that you said about Harro. To start off with, he got a gig at Peter Bodycott's wedding because he was colourblind and Pete was making him wear a pink suit. And he's the only one that'd get the gig. So that helped. And solo, mate, it wouldn't be on the market now if he was the front man, I can tell you that. It would have been solo, one day. Anyway, mate, those are people that don't know me. I'm 1/3 of the canoe team that Dave Harrison was in. The other 1/3 is Mike Wilson, and he's here today as well. Mike Wilson's just there. And I probably got the gig because they needed 3. And I was 6, but I got a gig anyway. And I can tell you, David had the enthusiasm and all he wanted to do, listen, as long as we stick it up Bodycott, Nelson and Hurst. It doesn't matter if we come second last, as long as they're last. Then we can do all right. But we managed to live the dream. We won a fair few Australian titles, the 3 of us together. We went overseas together and absolutely lived the dream. And it's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. That was something that was said by Abraham Lincoln. And that is exactly Harro. David certainly made use of every single day of his life. He never wasted time. He won many Australian titles, many state titles, individually and in teams events. He went to 2 world titles and he gave the sport away at 22. He did all that before he was 22 years old. What would have happened if he'd kept going? He would have dragged me along with him, probably. David was working as a motor mechanic and I had to get a job because I was going overseas. And I ended up scoring a job with Keith Thorne, who owned the village ski shop down in Cooma. He had a shop in Newcastle as well. And through that association, David met Keith. And through that association, one thing led to another, and David ended up down the Snow. Once he got down here, David met everybody. And I mean everybody. And I can tell you right now, when David first come down, he'd never even seen snow. He'd never even been on skis. But I can tell you, Harro the Eagle. Harro Eddie the Eagle. That was Harro. And the problem was that the mates that he sort of met and went skiing with happened to be Mick Klumer, George Dykoff. I don't know whether they're here or whether they're around or anything, but these guys were good skiers. And Harro, being Harro, is top of Olympic. We can do that. How? Well, you're skiing. You just point downhill and off you go. And I can tell you he crashed a lot. That was the Eagle. The Eagle wasn't around at that time, by the way, but he would have made a good Eagle. Who was David Harrison? Harro? He was a son. He was a brother. He was a husband. He was a father. And he was a friend. And best of all, he was a bloody great bloke. Sorrow fills our hearts during this sad moment, a sorrow that is deep and personal. David has silently closed the door of life to us, but always use your mind as a keyhole to look through and remember Harro. Oh, don't need you anymore. David and I go way back to about 71. I was starting canoeing, and David, well, he was only 15, but he was the man. At 15, he'd already won the state championships. I wanted to be like him. I was the snotty-nosed kid that was always hanging around. And I ended up getting the gig because somebody else had a capsize and got hurt. And that's how I got my gig with him, but he sucked me right along with him for the ride. David was in Newcastle. He was top 10 Sportsman of the Year, an award that was given, and David was the first non-sport, like the typical rugby leagues and all that sort of stuff. David was the first one to get involved in that. Right from the start, he said to me, "Ray, water can't hurt you. If you show fear, the other competitors will know you're scared and, just act like it's no big deal." I said, "Yeah, fair enough." I said, "As long as you laugh and carry on, the others think you know what you're doing." I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well," he said, "off you go." So off I went, and he was right. Water didn't hurt me at all, but the rocks on the bottom certainly hurt me bum as I was sliding down on me bum. He said, "Well, I told you the water wouldn't hurt you." And that's sort of bloke he was. He figured that's the way it is. Now, everyone's going to sit here and say, "Oh, what a good bloke Harro is." I'm going to bust that myth. You can't have a perfect bloke like Harro and not have some things in the closet. Well, I'm in the know. In 77, David and I got a 2-storey townhouse. It was really well situated in Newcastle on the street. Down one end, about 200 metres, was a nightclub that stayed open till 3 o'clock in the morning. The other end, a church. We'll get back to the church later. But I can tell you, we didn't make much money, but we had our priorities right. Number one was your rent. We had to pay our rent. Number two, we had to get some flagons and put in the fridge. Not that we drunk them, but we figured if we were going to the nightclub and we got some girls, we'd better have the stuff in the fridge to entertain them when they come back. So that come before food. And then we worked out that we really didn't have enough money for food. Now we go back to the church. we worked out, and there's probably a few people here today that don't even know who Harro is. They're probably here going, what's going on over there? So they're here. Well, this is what we figured funerals were like. That if we turned up at a church where there was a funeral, we knew that there was a feed on after. And we knew that we could take some doggy bags and we could fill the fridge. And all we had to do was work out when the funerals were at the church. It worked for a while. And it fed us for a while. Then we decided, this is no good. We really need to get a housemate to pay some of the bills. We don't want a bloke. We better get a girl. So we're going to interview girls to come and pay us to stay there. We figured this is all right. This will work. So we had a plan, and the plan was no boyfriends. So we interviewed all these girls, got them there. Have you got a boyfriend? Yes. Oh, okay, we'll be in touch. Gone. Until eventually we hit one. You got a boyfriend? No. Okay. We rang her back next day. Not a problem. So we thought we'd let her move in. We went away for the weekend paddling, come back. We walk in, pretty late. Next minute, the biggest butch lesbian you ever seen in your life. Come out of the kitchen. And she was scary. And the girl come out and said, oh, I want you to meet my partner. So that put a dent in that idea. But, see, Harro's not as clean-skinned as you all think he is. There's one last story I want to say. And this is one that Harro said to me when it happened. Never, ever tell anyone about this story. Sorry, mate. It's time. Basically what happened, we decided we were going up to a canoeing event, and we decided that we were going to go, instead of the coast road, we were going to go the New England Highway. So we go up the New England Highway, and it is teeming rain. Absolutely, you cannot see. So Harro, I said, look, we can't see, let's pull over and just wait. He said, no, I can see the car in front's got red lights, we just follow it. Oh yeah, it's fair call, I can run with that. So we're driving and up the New England Highway, and it's pouring down, and we diverted off the road, onto a bit of dirt road, bit more dirt road, about 15 k's in dirt road, and we pull up at this house, following this car. I said, what's going on here, Harro? He said, I don't know. Anyway, the guy gets out the car and he said, you've been following me, mate. He said, well, we couldn't see, it was raining, so we followed you. He said, yeah, I turned off into me property. And Harro goes, well, we followed you. And Harro said, how stupid are we? And the guy said, look, come in and I'll cook you a steak. So here we were sitting in this bloke's place, we didn't even know, he cooked us a steak, and as we were driving out he went, you never tell anyone this story. So we didn't. How to sum up Harro? It's simple. A champion sportsman, a champion bloke, and finally today, a champion becomes a legend. Thanks very much.
Just before we move on to Sue, who has a special poem, I'd just like to invite anyone else out there in the audience who's got a special story.
Con and I would like to thank Sue, Mitch and Brock for the opportunity to make a contribution to the memory of David Harro Harrison and to thank them for their roles in what can only be described as an extraordinary life. We would like to acknowledge the massive contribution that Harro made to the snow sports community and the APSI, particularly the role he played in supplying and supporting instructors of all levels and means and allowing many of the folks struggling to survive to use his equipment at little or no cost to achieve their goals. The snow sports schools have benefited greatly through his unending benevolence both here and in Japan, and many a candidate has Harro to thank for their success in the exam process or simply a day out through the gates in Niseko. I was always intrigued by the fact that he never allowed the less than perfect condition of the equipment that some of the people returned to him to cause any serious, or for them to cop a serious serve, which on many occasions would have been completely appropriate. One of my favourite memories was in the shop in Niseko watching him shredding chest-deep snow at Kyoro on his laptop and not being able to move off the couch due to lack of match fitness. Beautiful turns from a beautiful soul, his infectious laugh and wicked sense of humour will stay with me forever. Thank you.
I think the instructors in this area really owe a great deal of gratitude to what Harro's offered and done. Like Mike said, the excellent service, the perfection that he expected from all his equipment, and I've got to say his staff. He chose really good staff, and everybody that worked for him pushed out gear that was just 100%. You never got a bad tuning, and more importantly, it just says a lot about who he is. He was very much a perfectionist, competitor. On that front, I was lucky enough to play golf with Harro and always laughed at the longest drive holes that we had. And we'd often just let him go last, just to rile him up. You know, it's either going to go long or wide. But either way, we'd all sit there at the back there with a bit of a grin in our face, watching him put his back out, swinging as hard as he could ever swing, and watching that ball go way right or left, often straight. But that was the type of bloke Harro was, a competitor, a perfectionist, and a lovely bloke. We'll miss him.
Thanks very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to say anything?
Don't go changing. The first time I ran into him when I was only a young punk, him and Brian Coughlin working at building the Alpine Gables, which is a long time ago. There was a little Italian guy who was the foreman then, and there was no mobiles, and every time the phone would ring, he'd run out and go, Brown, Brown, telephone, Brown. So every time I'd ring up Harro up the shop here, I'd go, they said, can I speak to Harro? And they go, who is it? I go, it's Brown. And they go, who? And I go, Brown. And he goes, give it here. It's just endless things and just comments, you know, the tune, how you going tune, and just always had a smile on his face. I was fortunate enough to start rafting with Harro when they began Upper Murray whitewater rafting and the servo over in Cancoban, and we had the trips with those guys and Nutty and Brian and Brett and all those blokes. It was just, some of the memories are endless. And Gnu, I don't know if you're here somewhere, Gnu, but, you know, oh, there he is. Shaved your beard off. It was just great friendships, and that carried on through the years. And when I first started, they used to have these big boats called Metzlers, which are a big, cumbersome, massive thing. And Harro turned up, and he was the first guy to have an Achilles, and we were like, how cool is this dude? So like Harro, yeah, and so many stories came out of that. Remember the day Harro nearly drowned, and we thought, oh, he'll be right. We all turned around and we went, where's Harro? But yeah, just knowing Harro, skiing, just, you know, worked through the shop, stuff, and he's just a great guy. It's going to be a great loss. But everyone always memories, funny laugh, great personality, and lovely bloke. So.
Yeah, I want to just talk about Harro the skier. And we all talk about Harro the skier, but there's not many people who've actually skied with him. My aim was to not leave the shop until he came out. That could be a week in the making. You'd go in, you'd plant a seed, and you'd say, let's go skiing, Harro. You're like, no, too busy. And you'd look around the shop and it's like, mate, there's no one fucking here. Let's go. It's deep. Come in the next day, come on, Harro. And then one night I went in, and Mitchy might remember this, he was a bit younger then. It was a mighty night skiing night, and we'd heard of this legendary spot, the backside of Onay Ridge. There was a rope line there, but not that night. Someone had taken it down, we think. And it was a big night. There was someone else, I'm not sure who it was, but this was, you know, dreams were made of. It was deep, it was cold, it was dry smoke, and we were all just high-fiving each other, and we kept on going wider and deeper. And there was one bit, Harro said, "This is amazing, we're actually traversing at speed back uphill, let's go again." I don't know, can you remember that one, Mitchy? Anyway, there's another time there, and someone just mentioned it actually, these photos that Harro had of this Curro Day. Well, I was actually there, and it started out in tears. I said to Harro, "Let's go to Curro." He goes, "No, you guys are going to kill me, I'm not fit enough." Well, he wasn't. So our first run over the back, he's, I don't know if anyone that skis gets a quad cramp, but they're quite painful. Well, Harro started with one quad cramp, and then the next minute he had two. And he's on the ground screaming and crying, and we're laughing at him, and he's laughing back at us, and he goes, "I fucking told you." So we're like, "Come on, Harro, let's go." And he's like, "We're not doing that one again." So we went down to this little secret spot, and it was only a couple of turns each time, and I just sat down the bottom and took photos of him, and he loves those photos, and I love that day. He's just a frother. At the end of the day, people talk about Harro, and at the end of the day, if you get him out there in that realm, he's just a big frother. One more quick one, it was a bit of sacrifice from Tracy. It was a couple of years later. It was like, "Let's go skiing." "No." 4 days later, "Okay, I'll come." Anyway, we go up the hill, and the gates were going to be good out the side of Nisiko, and we get off the top, and I hear this big slap and bang on the ground. I turn around, there's Tracy. She ended up breaking her ribs at the top of the lift. And she said, "No, Harro's finally out. You guys go skiing, enjoy yourself. I'll make my own way back down." And Harro's like, "Okay, let's go." But yeah, he was a legend, and we all loved him, and we'll continue to love him. And yeah, those who got to spend time with him, and you know, he's just a beautiful man, a great bloke, great family, and yeah, thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Not only is he a legend in the mountains, he's a legend at Seal Rocks, where he fished with my husband. He was a great fisherman. And this day Bill said, "Would you like to come out handlining this afternoon?" He said, "No, I'll go in my little tinny by myself." So later on, Bill was out with another mate about 10k out to sea, and they hear a boat, and they turn around, and here's Harro in a tiny little tinny with a little motor. He said, "How you going, mate? Any fish out here?" So he is a legend everywhere. I don't know of any man that is so loved and so remembered, and such great memories by all of us, and people we don't even know. Not only has he been a wonderful friend to me, to my children, my grandchildren. My daughter came down here and became a ski instructor. He looked after her as he's looked after all of us here and our families and our grandchildren, and he'll never be forgotten. Thank you.
I'd like to call Sue to the microphone, please.
I'd like to read a poem called "Crossing the Bar" by Lord Alfred Tennyson. Sunset, an evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. But such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight, an evening bell, and after that the dark. And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out are born of time and place, the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. I'd like to thank you all for coming today. I can't believe how many of you are here. It's just so wonderful. Thank you so, so much. Thank you.
I think it's a good idea right about now that everyone, 3 cheers for Harro. Hip hip. Hooray! Hip hip. Hooray! Hip hip. Hooray! Harro.
Thank you, that was beautiful. Okay, on behalf of the family, I'd like to publicly thank the following individuals. Sue Brock and Mitch would like to extend a huge thank you to Anthony Cleary and the wonderful staff of LCR for everything they've done today. Can we give them a big cheer, please? As well as Bruce Marshall and Jodie Evans from Crackenback Farm for all of their support towards today for Harro. Thank you to everyone who's made the long trek here, and as you can hear, there's people who've come from far and wide. Harro would be stoked, to use his words. Sue would like you to join the family to eat, drink, share stories, to toast David as he was known to many people, and to take with you fond memories of the man and most of all his infectious laugh. In closing, if you have any donations towards the Canberra Hospital Foundation Medical Oncology Clinical Trial Unit for melanoma research, or the Paralympic ski team, there's a red box with envelopes on the table right next to Harro. He's keeping an eye on it, so don't pinch anything. If Harro were here today, he would say, "Party on and have a great time," as he always wanted people to enjoy themselves. On behalf of the family, thank you so much for coming today, joining us to celebrate a life well lived. 3 cheers for Harro. Hip hip. Hip hip.